Hey guys, Alex here with Heckman Productions, and welcome to the second half of my Morelands Motocross Under the Lights series recap video. So first of all, I know this video has taken a while to come out. My rounds 1 through 5 video came out pretty shortly after round 5, but I've been so busy. We've been going on trips, been going everywhere, so finally have the time to sit down and talk about what happened in rounds 6 through 10 and how I ended up being the 250A champion. So if you remember, at round 5 I had a pretty rough couple motos. I ended up crashing, and I still won because I was the only rider there, but I didn't really ride very good, so I wanted to come back with some redemption at round 6, and then I ended up being the only 250A rider again. But in the first moto, I had a pretty nice battle going with first Connor Everly. Had to get by him, he's a 250B rider, and then I had to get by Jake Davenport, who I believe was in either the 35 plus or 25 plus class. But we had a pretty good battle going there for a while. Eventually I did pass him, and we kind of went back and forth. It was pretty cool, and that was one of the more fun motos. And then moto 2 of that night, I ended up getting a great start, jumped a triple around the outside, came up a little short. That always hurts, but I did end up being in the lead right from the get-go, so I was able to kind of just take off from there. And it was kind of nice because the previous day we did our photo shoot for my new graphics, so I did a lot of riding that day, and then I went and did racing on Saturday, so I was pretty beat by the end of Saturday just with how much riding I did. So that pretty much is it for round 6. It was pretty relaxing day, and it was so long ago now I can't really remember anything that crazy that went on that day. It just seemed like a good regular day at the track. So go ahead and move on to round 7 now, which was probably the most enjoyable night of racing I had this season. When I signed up, I noticed I was again the only 250A rider, but I noticed that there was a open A rider signed up, or 2 open A riders. Jake Davenport from the 35 plus class also signed up for open A, and then Dan Petrie signed up in open A as well on a 125. So I decided to pull out of the 250A class and go into the open A class so I could actually battle with some people. So I'm still pretty bummed even to this day about how my start of the first open A moto went at round 7. I had an awesome jump. I was pretty much dead even with everybody, and I was set up to rail the outside in triple, and I would have put me right in the front from the beginning. But instead I overshot the corner, blew it out, actually nicked the hay bale. It was pretty sketchy, and my mindset went from I'm going to get the whole shot to I need to not crash in about 0.2 seconds. And then after I didn't crash, I glanced to my left, realized I was still even with the first guys, so I checked up a little bit and hopped in behind them because I didn't want to gain an advantage and get protested. Normally I'd be like, whatever, I'm the only one in my class, but I wasn't that day, so I had to check up. I ended up letting Jake by me, who of course was in my class. Connor Everly as well went by me. And then I overjumped the double in the rhythm section, which didn't allow me to do the grandstand triple, which therefore let Dan Petrie pass me. So both of the guys that I needed to beat were in front of me now. So I kind of shot myself in the foot big time with that one. So yeah, the first lap I kind of just tucked in, was watching them. Dan was getting really close to Connor, so I was kind of trying to watch, see what was going on. And then after the finish line, he went wide, so I kind of got up close to him. And he ended up overshooting the double this time, so he couldn't triple, especially on that 125. So I ended up tripling right by him, and then it worked out perfect because Connor was lined up for the inside line, and I just shot right around the outside and was able to make that pass as well. So I was able to not only get by one of my main competitors, but then also put somebody in between us, basically in the same move, which was really nice at the time. It gave me a little bit of peace of mind, especially since I was racing somebody I'd never raced before. I had raced Jake before. We'd lined up together, but we had never raced in the same class. So I felt pretty confident going up against him, but I didn't really have any experience at all with Dan. So then I tucked in behind Jake, and we kind of rode for a lap, and then about a half a lap later, Dan actually went down, and I saw that out of the corner of my eye, so I knew I didn't really have to worry about anybody behind me, which was nice. I just tried to focus on Jake and trying to find a way past him because he took my 2 main passing spots, which is what I used to pass Connor, railing that outside. He started taking that outside line, and then he also started taking that inside rut right afterwards. So those are my 2 main passing spots, so I kind of was scratching my head, honestly, trying to think where else can I pass him. And then he ended up stalling the bike in that inside rut, and I just flew around the outside. That was probably the easiest pass of the day. I gave him grief for it afterwards. It was pretty funny though. I ended up being in the lead and just kind of rode it home. I remember I wasn't riding super well. I was making little mistakes here and there, but I still was able to bring home the win and even gave a little fist pump over the finish line. So that brought us into Moto 2. I kind of lined up in the same area. I was going to try to do the exact same thing I did in Moto 1, but actually execute it this time. And of course, in this Moto, I didn't get nearly as good of a jump, and I think I clutched it too much because I was behind everybody. Like, I looked to the left and there's quite a few people that were in front of me. So I was like, well, I'll still try to rail the outside and maybe just not jump it. And then a 250B rider ended up moving over a little bit, so I had to go off the track again and just kind of shook my head at myself like, here we go again. And I ended up tucking in behind Connor and Jake again. And Dan was actually behind me at that point. And then I heard him. I knew it was him right behind me. So I was trying to make a quick pass on Connor. So I ended up going around the outside of him. And he knows that he's not in our class. So he's not going to like try to push the issue around us. And he did make it pretty easy for me to pass him. But that corner was pretty chaotic because Jake ended up going to the inside rut, stalling it again. And Dan was trying to follow him. So he had to pop out of that rut and then swing around. And he ended up passing me. So he went from like fourth, well, it would have been third place in Open A, but he was behind Connor. So like fourth place all the way to the lead in just that one corner, just with how everything played out. So then I was behind him, and like I said, I didn't really know, because I did make the pass on him in the first moto, but that was just because he couldn't clear the jump. So I didn't really know. So I kind of just studied him for a lap, and then he ended up not taking that inside rut the next lap. So I made the quick pass on him there, and even then I tried to put my head down and charge. I didn't want to give him a chance to pass me back anywhere. And eventually I looked back and noticed I had a gap, and I was just able to bring it home. That was a really enjoyable day. I was able to ride to my full capabilities in that second moto. I was feeling a lot smoother, a lot more consistent everywhere, so that was really nice. So that moves us to round 8, which we dubbed the mud race. I ended up, pretty much all of these rounds I do one session of open practice before, just to kind of get the body moving, and give me a little more practice before the race program starts. And during open practice, it was really nice. The track was perfect, the weather was nice, and there was a kind of a threat for rain, but based on what we were looking at, we thought it was going to miss us. If it was supposed to rain heavy, I wasn't going to race, because I don't like mud races. I don't like beating up on the equipment like that. But after looking at the forecast, I made the decision to race anyways. And through practice, it was good. And then right around the end of practice, it just started downpouring on the track. So at that point I was like, well, great. Here we go. I've done a lot of mud races at Morelands before. Here comes another one. And so we ended up going into the first moto, and I hadn't obviously ridden the track since it had been all muddy yet, so I didn't really know how slick certain spots were. I ended up starting outside of both the people that I were racing with. I was the only guy in 250A again. Jake was there again, but he was in 35 plus, I believe. He lined up with us, Jake Davenport. And then Zach Mazurek, number 12, made his return to the series at that round. He had taken a couple races off. So those are the two main guys that I started up front with. I ended up lining up outside of both of them in the first moto, which was a mistake. Zach got the jump on me. We were pretty even, but he had the inside, so I got pushed outside of the rut, which then caused me to slip and almost fall, and then Jake got by, so then I had to tuck in behind them. And I didn't realize at the time that neither of them were jumping the triple in the rhythm section. So when I landed the double and I realized I have enough traction to clear this triple, I sent it, and then Jake didn't go for it. And that was really, really close. Too close for comfort. I landed really close to him, and I was not happy with how close I was there. I ended up squaring up under him and making the pass in the next couple of corners on him, and then I tucked in behind Zach. And the pass on him was pretty sketchy. He took the inside rut that I was planning on using to pass him. So I kind of just cut over that off-camber hump. I wasn't trying to hit him or anything. I was just kind of trying to spook him. And I think it worked because he ended up getting out of his line. He got over in the slop a little bit, so he couldn't clear the big double, which I did, and I ended up landing a little bit behind him, but I had the momentum. So I just sent it around that outside and was able to make the pass, and that was pretty cool. At the moment, I was like, that was a little close, but then watching the video, it really showed how close that was. But Zach and I are pretty good friends, and we know we race each other hard, but we obviously don't take each other out or anything like that. So that was a pretty fun moto. And then Moto 2, the start was a little bit chaotic. My bike stalled right before I went to yellow light. And at that point, you can't put up 2 minutes. It's too late. You got to start it and go. So thankfully, it fired up on the second kick, and I was able to have the bike running. But then the other thing was I had put on a different pair of goggles. I put on my clear goggles, and they fogged up instantly as soon as I put them on. So I could barely see, but I didn't want to start a mud race without goggles. So I kept them on and was trying to see, and I was like, I need to get the whole shot so I can take these off. And I actually was able to get the whole shot. I got the jump on Zach, they were both inside of me again. And then Jake was way on the inside, and I kind of saw him coming out of the corner of my eye, but he ended up checking up, thankfully, because I sent it into that inside rut. Was able to come away with the whole shot, and a couple corners later, I took the goggles off. And then I was just able to bring it home and take home the win in that moto as well. So that brings us to round 9, which is probably one of the more well-known rounds because they had the money moto at that round. So money moto, it was $300 to win, $150 for second, $50 for third. So it brought out a couple bigger names. There was Danny Maris and Eddie Morris, and they both have their pro card. Eddie had been going to a few of the pro nationals throughout the season, and then Danny had just gotten his pro card and ended up trying to qualify for the Ironman Pro National. Neither of them have made it into the motos. I think Eddie has in the past, but it's been a little while. I know he didn't make it this year, and Danny didn't make it at Ironman. But anyways, they're both fast. Eddie was on a 450, and I really didn't have anything for him the whole night. He was on a whole different level, and I knew that he was going to win the money moto pretty much as soon as I started riding with him. I knew I had no chance. Danny, though, I felt like I was really close to. I ended up doing a session with him in open practice. Well, we only really got to do a lap, and then they red flagged it. So I didn't really get to gauge myself too well in that time. And then in the practice before the race, my bike stalled or GoPro wouldn't start or something. So I didn't end up riding with those two guys either. I was kind of off on my own. So I didn't really know how I was going to stack up until the motos. And that's what makes me the most nervous, is where I have no clue where I'm going to be. So anyways, Moto 1 comes around, and I am so nervous on the gate that I actually jumped and I hit the gate and made a whole bunch of other people flinch. And I ended up hopping over the gate a little bit, and I kind of got a bit of a head start. I don't know how much it really helped me, but I ended up getting the whole shot. I don't know if it was because I jumped over the gate or because I literally made everybody else on the gate hit the gate and hesitate. I don't really know. But anyways, I came out with the lead. I was trying to ride fast, and when I'm trying to ride fast, I end up making small mistakes. So that happened in the race. I was making little errors here and there. I heard there were 4 strokes behind me. I knew it was them. I took a glance, and I saw it was Eddie, and he wasn't in 250A. He was in 35 plus, 25 plus, one of those two. So when he got up next to me, I let him go because I knew he was faster than me, and I thought maybe I'd try to pick up see where he's faster than me. And really, it's just the 450 power. He was able to pull me at pretty much everywhere. But then I still had Danny behind me. I had a little bit of a gap, and then on the last lap, I got caught up in some lap traffic, and he got really close to me, but I still was able to hold on to the win. So that was pretty gratifying, knowing that I was able to hold him off. So I knew that I could maybe potentially hold with him in the money moto. So going to the money moto, of course, that was between the first and second motos. I ended up trying to use my same start technique, going outside and hitting the triple, and Eddie knew it. He went to the inside and cut off my line and made it so I couldn't triple. So Danny ended up being pretty much right up next to me for that start strip, or for the rhythm section. He had a little bit of a wheel on me, so he cut over, went to that outside, and I had to tuck in behind him. And then pretty much that's how we rode. Like, Eddie pretty much took off. He had a gap on us, and he was flying in that money moto, turning 57s and 58s, and Danny and I were in the 59s, so we had nothing for Eddie. He was the rightful winner of the money moto. And then as far as Danny and I stayed right with him for quite a few laps, and we were turning low 59s, just clicking them off. And then I started getting tired, so I backed it off just a little bit. And I noticed that I really didn't lose. Like, I had one bad lap where I turned to 101, And then I started turning 1 minute flats, pretty much, just consistent. And I noticed that we were still like pretty much the same gap. And when I went back and looked at the lap times, he slowed up pretty much the same time I slowed up, which kind of upset me. If I had a little more fitness, maybe I could have made a pass, but you know, who knows. So I ended up coming home third in the money moto. Took home $50, which was nice. It's better than finishing fourth and getting nothing. And that brings us to Moto 2. My goal was just to try to start in front of Danny. And then before the gate drop, Danny's bike wouldn't start. His start button went out, so he had to bump start it and it wouldn't go. So I actually held up like a 2-minute wait for him. He lined up next to me. I made sure that they waited for him. And he had a second bike, a 252 stroke, that he rolled up to the line. So he ended up racing that bike in the last moto. So I ended up getting a pretty good start. I tripled around the outside. Eddie got a better jump. He was just in front of me right from the get-go. I tripled around the outside, cased the heck out of the triple on that first lap. I did not feel very good. I really expected Danny to shoot to the inside and pass me, but he ended up not being that close. Devin Staples was actually pretty close to me, and I glanced over at him to make sure it wasn't Danny. But anyways, Eddie, he was gone again. I ended up getting closer to him later because of a medical. Getting into that, so it was either the second or third lap. I could hear Danny behind me. I could hear the two-stroke. I knew it was him. And I wasn't really riding my best. Like, I was still turning decent lap times, but I was nervous. And when you're nervous, you don't ride your best. So one lap, I come around and I notice that the finish line flagger's waving a yellow, and I'm like, all right, whatever. I still send the triple. And then in the air, I noticed that there's medic flags, caution flags, everything. Like, there's a war zone, and I'm in the air, so I can't really do much. I ended up slamming on the brakes, had to fade wide, and then there were a couple guys trying to push the bike of the crash rider, Jack Regal, out of the way. It was right where I was going, so I had to jump off the track. Looking back, I should have just stayed off the track until after the rhythm section and pull on in front of Danny. That's what I should have done. We would have stayed in the same positions. He might not have liked it, but that's the rules, you know. It was a medic flag. You're not supposed to gain an advantage. At least that's how I viewed it. So he ended up passing me because I went off the track and couldn't do the jumps. So the next lap comes around and there's still the medic flag, and this time he triples and he goes to the outside and I sneak to the inside and I pass him. So in the time being, I was like, well, that's pretty much even. He passed me on a medic, I passed him on a medic. It was null, you know, pretty even. At that point we were close to Eddie too, because he was being really cautious around the medics area, which you should be. Coming around to what would have been the white flag, because I don't think they threw the white flag at all. And I noticed out of the corner of my eye that he was throwing a red flag. They finally red flagged the race. It really should have been a red flag from the beginning, but that's beside the point. He ended up red flagging, so I kind of checked up a bit, and that was a mistake. Coming into the last hairpin, I heard him, but it was too late. I got cleaned out. He just came up the inside. He drove away and left me in the sand. And it didn't hurt me at all. It just put me on the ground. It was no big deal, but kind of sucked, you know, losing in like the last corner. I didn't really appreciate the move at the time. I was pretty upset that he cleaned me out like that when it's a red flag and it's only $30. But, you know, I talked to him after and we were fine about it. So, and that was so long ago now, it doesn't really bother me at all. Natalie doesn't really like it, but she's not to weigh in on that. So anyways, that was round 9. Pretty crazy night. That brought us into round 10, and coming into round 10, I had committed to 7 video edits that night, and usually I only do 3. So my night was going to be super crazy. So what I ended up doing was did a full open practice session before the race program. And then when the race practices came around, I just didn't ride. So I went straight from the open practice from before the track prep right to the race. And so that worked out okay. It really didn't affect me that much. So I really was just hoping that I was the only guy in 250A, so I wouldn't have to worry about racing people, and that I could just take it easy since I had so much extra work. Just ride, have fun, end the season on a good note. And that's how it was. I was the only rider. I didn't really recognize any of the other B riders I was lining up with other than Zach, and there were a couple other guys that I had raced against before and I had beat them. So I wasn't really too worried going into it. We were lining up with 25 or 35 plus, I can't remember. and there was this guy, Cody, I think it's 747, I believe is his number, and he ripped an awesome start on his 252 stroke. And I was right there with him, and he was shredding. I was like, man, who is this guy? Turned out he ended up taking 4th in the money moto, but he only did the money moto that night. So, and I started in front of him in that, so I never really saw him. And he was quite a bit of ways behind us top 3, but I never really saw him, so I didn't really know who he was. But then in the race, he ended up kind of pulling away a little bit, and then I went for the triple on the finish line and cased the crap out of it. And of course, this race, my GoPro didn't turn on for some reason. It was glitching out, so I didn't get this race on GoPro. I was pretty bummed because it ended up being a good race. After I cased the heck out of the triple, my Lit Pro actually went bouncing out. I cased so bad. I kind of took a glance back. I saw that Jake Davenport was there and that Zach was there, or maybe it was Connor, one or the other. And I kind of just took a breath and was like, all right, let's put in a charge. And by this point, Cody was quite a bit ahead of me. So I had to put on a charge, and I ended up catching up to him around the last lap. And I kind of put it in on him, kind of tried to spook him the same way I did Zach in the mud race. And it worked. He ended up checking up, and we got next to each other on the double. And just like the mud race, I just sent that thing around the outside. And Cody was nice. He could have just ran right into me. But he didn't. He held his line right under me, and it was really cool. Looking at I'm sure I put the video up. Thank you, Hoyt Benenhoff, for the video, by the way. That was a pretty sweet pass looking back at it. And then after the race, he wasn't too happy with the pass that was made, but he ended up apologizing, and we were all cool for it for the second moto. So coming to the second moto, last moto of the season, you know what I thought to myself? I want to go out a winner. So I was trying my hardest to beat Cody off the start, but I wasn't able to. I ended up being behind him again. So I knew that I was going to have to go up. I think I was behind Jake as well. I forgot to watch that race back. It's been so long I can't remember. But I know I had to make at least one pass before I could get Cody. So eventually I did pass Cody, and I was able to do it around the outside. And he kind of checked up. I kind of noticed that he kind of let me go. And as we pulled off, I was like, good ride, and I'm so tired. And he said, yeah, I was like, just go. So I think he did kind of let me by because he knew I was a little bit quicker, and it's fine with me. We ended up having a good, clean race, and that's exactly how I wanted to end the season, with a good, clean race. So really my goal with the season was I pretty much knew I was going to win 250A because nobody really else shows up for it besides me. My goal for the season was to be able to compete with those guys and beat them. In both of the races that 2 other 250A riders showed up, I beat them in one moto and they beat me in the other moto. So I was able to be right there with them. We were the same speed, and even the first time it was Jordan Frederick, I felt like I was actually faster than him. I just couldn't find a way around him in that last moto. And then at round 9, I felt like Danny might have been a little bit quicker than me because I wasn't riding my best, but I still was able to beat him in that first moto. And then of course round 7, I did open A with 2 other A riders, and I was able to beat them. So I feel like I met my expectations and my goals for the season. I was able to compete with other A riders and still come home with a championship, still be safe. I only hit the deck once, I believe. So I was pretty happy with my riding for the whole season. And I mean, the biggest thing was came home safe and came home with that #1 plate. So I want to say a big thank you to you guys for watching, checking out the video, especially if you hung all the way to the end of it. I do have plans for one more race this season. I'm going to try to do a vlog and see how that goes. We're going to go to Valley for the last D14 race of the season in a couple weeks from when I'm recording it, but probably closer to a week by the time it gets uploaded. So thank you guys so much for watching the video, and we'll see you at the next race.